How timely this is.
Oh,
Very
okay.
timely.
So we want to welcome everybody. And anybody who can mute yourself so that we don't hear other conversations, that would be very much appreciated. We have a sponsor.
Rhonda,
Yes.
hi.
Hi.
I just want you to know I'm in Denmark.
Oh my goodness.
And Cynthia.
Wow.
She's in Denmark.
We got a Denmark listening in today. We have an England listening in today. We have Rhoda Marks, who is sponsoring class today in honor of her 64 years together with her beloved Heshi. And we say to her a hearty mazel tov.
Mazel tov.
And so, and thank you all for joining, and we're very glad that that you're with us. And I also would like to dedicate the class today for the first yahrzeit of Liz Kruger, who has left us last year and is sorely missed amongst all of us, her friends and family. Okay, we are starting with Shoftim. Can anybody tell us anything that they might have remembered from last week's class about what we learned about Gidon, the Shofet Gidon?
I'd like to say one thing.
80%
It bothered me. We were having a little discussion. Cynthia brought it up last week.
Yes.
Did Gidon choose the lappers or did he choose the kneelers? And you, I think, said lappers, and then I went and I said it bothered me because maybe it was the kneelers. What I came up with,
Right.
not on my own, but
Yeah.
by looking at it, that the lappers, that they were kneeling face down with their face in the water. They weren't kneeling; they were lying
They are
flat.
prostrate.
Thank you, prostrate. And if
Prostrate.
the enemy, how could he choose people who don't look around them to see where the enemy is? Whereas the kneelers, they were on their knees and they were bringing the water up to their faces. They would be able to look to see if the enemy were coming. So
Right.
you said lappers last week, but right now I'm going for the kneelers.
No, it wasn't the kneelers. And it's because the kneelers have a tendency towards idol worship.
Right.
Well, that was another argument, but
Right.
tendency. But
Rashi says that those who got down and on their knees and actually we'll get to this in a few minutes. We're going to get to it, what Rashi says. And look, how many Mefarshim are there? There's so many. That's how many opinions there are. So we will get to that again as a review. So hang on, okay? But what did we really learn last week in terms of who Gidon was and why he was chosen by God? Anybody? Anyone have something to say?
Well, he was a very special person, and there were a lot of comparisons between him and Moshe and David Hamelech.
Let me just correct you.
Yeah. Okay.
He's not compared to Moshe or David in his stature. The experiences and the requests that he makes of God are similar to these people, not his stature by any means, because we find that Gidon is
Don't close your little face.
second.
Are you finished with it, John? No, I've got a whole lot of stuff to put.
Of Shoftim, who are now questioning God much more than we ever heard. We never heard Devorah question Hashem. Hashem said, "You do this," she did it. Hashem said to Ehud, "You do this," he did it. Hashem said to Shamgar, "You do this," he did it. There was no questioning. There was no test for Hashem to prove himself. But now, as we're getting further and further away from Yehoshua and the entrance into Eretz Yisrael, and the more involved and intermeshed the communities of Eretz Yisrael, Bnei Yisrael, are getting with the Canaanite population, you find that the more skepticism, lack of confidence, and challenges that the judges are going to make, a request are going to make of Hashem. So let's continue. Go ahead, Xenia, but I don't want anyone to think that
Okay,
Gidon is on the level of
okay,
David.
fine. Okay, sorry, didn't take good enough notes
Okay.
last week. He, what I have is, he was hiding from the Midianites, who were taking the cattle and the goods from them. And he does keep questioning Hashem, which is what you were saying about the skepticism. And, you know, when he does have 22,000 troops, Hashem says that he needs people that are afraid spiritually, that have a fear of God. And he just wants a Kiddush Hashem, the God-fearing army. So they're down to 2/3 of the army left, and there were still too many people. And Hashem says, you know, go down to the water and tell the men to drink. And then they ended up eliminating down to 300.
Right.
So, okay, that's what I got from last week.
Very good. Very good. Okay, here we go.
We also are introduced to Gideon when he is hiding from the Midianites and all of the ones that are after them. They're all off, and he is actually or whatever he's doing hiding in where they would thresh the land. Because also his father, he comes from a family where his father is extremely powerful and a leader amongst not just, they are Jewish people, but they're the Jewish people that have really gotten into the idolatry worship,
Right.
the worship of Baal, the worship of the tree, and all the rest of the
Right.
crap.
Right.
And I think he's probably quite taken aback by the fact that God has approached him and has asked him. It's almost like he's got a
Half a kilometre.
and then they're thinking, why me?
The Jewish Museum, Danish Jewish, half a kilometre.
Okay.
Right. So absolutely, he is
Take
stunned.
pictures.
Carol, can you please mute yourself?
Cynthia.
It's Cynthia.
Cynthia.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, so we have a situation here where Gidon is really bewildered and confounded as to why he was chosen, because his father is the chief idol worshiper and leader of the group of people in his community amongst his tribe who are most involved in idolatry and immoral behavior. So he keeps asking God for significant proof to make sure, yeah, this is really God. This is the God of the Jewish nation. This is the God who is going to test us. This is the God who is going to take us out of this terrible situation with the Midianites, the Amalekites, and the Bnei Kedem, the people of the east. So we go and find that at this point in time, Gidon has passed his test, that God has asked him to cut down the Asherah tree, use the wood for a sacrifice on the altar of Baal, and that he would then prove that God was, that he believed that God was with him. Joash, his father, once the people awake in the morning and see that their altar has been destroyed and that an korban has been given to Hashem of the Jewish nation, They're clamoring for Gidon's death, and that reminds us of the clamoring of the death of Lot in the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. And when you go against the ways of a people, people don't want you amongst them, and they want to get rid of you because of fear. And so they were fearful that there would be revenge from the Baal and the Asherah tree. So they tell Joash to give us your son so that we can kill him and get him out of the way. And what is Joash? Joash has to make a decision. Is my son more important, or is the community worshiping these idols more important? And like Terach, when Abraham smashed the idols, knowing that the idols were worthless pieces of stone, Terach doesn't punish his child because he knows they're only stone. So same as Joash. Joash knows that these are only idols. They have no real significance. So he says, and to his credit, he says, well, if Baal is so all powerful and all encompassing, let Baal come down and fight for himself and deal with my son. But he doesn't give his son up for to the people, and he changes his, oftentimes when people are in danger or very sick, the names get changed, or a name is added. And Joash adds a name to his son, and he calls him Yerubbabel, the one who is going to strive or contend with Baal. And so this is a significant change in his name, because his father seems to believe that Gidon will help the Jewish nation to rid themselves of the Midianites and the others that are making them suffer so much.
I especially like the fact that when Joash talked and what he said, that the way he turned it around. So you think Baal is such a big deal? Let him take care of himself.
Right.
Leave my boy alone. He's just a kid.
Right. So that's what any of us would expect of a father to say in terms of and what Gidon is, what this whole story is about. And we can certainly sum this up in very concisely. We can say that the emphasis is on the opportunity for the Jewish nation to once and for all rid themselves of the suffering and the oppression that is being heaped on them by these other nations, and a return to and a rejection of idolatry and the appreciation of the values that Hashem sends to us in living a Torah life. And once we adhere to the Torah life, and embrace it and continue it in our generation after generation, we are blessed. And when we do not embrace a Torah life, we are sent difficulties, challenges, and oppression by other nations. And this is basically self-inflicted, because if we stayed on the derech, we would also get reward for our behavior. When we get off the derech, we are sent challenges that are always not pleasant. So we have to make a choice, like Moshe says in Chazinu, before we go into Canaan. You're going to have to make a choice. You're going to have to make a choice for good or a choice for evil. And those are the things that Bnei Israel is struggling with right now. They cannot seem to get out of this acceptance of their neighbors' idolatry and terrible immoral behavior. Now, Gidon has gone through the challenge of of the breaking the altar. And now, but right before he has sent out a message for the troops to come from Naphtali, Asher, and Zebulun. They send 32,000 men. So clearly these people were intent on ridding themselves of the enemy. And Hashem says to Gidon, I cannot have all of these wonderful people because it would look as if the entire nation came to fight, and it wouldn't look like a miracle on my part. So we're going to have to weed them out. Now, there's several ways that he weeds them out. The first way what he says to Gidon is tell the people who are afraid in their hearts, not the afraid of war kind of thing, but the afraid of their spiritual neshamas, that they know that they have been involved in idolatry, and so they cannot expect Hashem to win a war for Klal Yisrael with people who have engaged in idolatry. And so he says to them, if they're afraid that I won't save them on the battlefield, if these people do not think that I will be with them and they're afraid, send them home. That's the first test. Send them home. And that lowers the number significantly to, I believe, a few thousand. And then Hashem says, it's still too many people. And so I'm going to change the test now, and we're going to go down to the water, and we're going to see who falls on their face and drinks the water, laps up the water, and who is going to scoop it up on their knees. And the people who fall, face down into the water and drink it up and lap like a dog, then those people will actually, those are the ones when they go down to the water and they're scooping up the water. They're on their knees, and those are the people that will be not saved. It's the ones who are going to put their head into the water, drink the water, and then get up. So, and like we said, it is indicative of those who are very used to falling on their face on their knees for idol worship. And God, this was the second way of sifting out those who are not going to be worthy challengers amongst Bnei Yisrael. So they go home. They are not sent home. They are sent away by Gidon, and he says to them, basically, go to the sidelines, because at some point we're going to need you, but not right now. And you just stay ready, because if you hear that I need you, then you come join in the battle. But for right now, we're down to 300, and Hashem says, what? Good number. 300 against the Midianites that look as though they're like locusts. That's how many there were. And the camels that were, you couldn't even count how many camels there were. So 300 against the masses of people, that is a good match, Hashem says, and that will do me well, serve me well. Gidon makes another request before he goes into battle. He says to God, can you just, he says, I'm not ready yet, God. I'm not ready for this. Can you do one more thing for me? Can you make sure that the water falls on the fleece that I'm going to leave on the threshing floor, and all the area around the fleece will be dry. He wakes up the next morning, and what do we have? A dry floor, a wet fleece, so much so that he can wring out the water into a basin. And then he says, okay, that could have been a fluke. One more chance, Hashem. He says, you know what? Let all the water go, the dew fall around the fleece, and the fleece be dry. The next morning, the same thing happens. It's a sign. And so we know Hashem is with Gidon for sure. Now let's turn in our text to the chapter 7. And Rhoda, since it's your anniversary, we're going to ask you if you'll read the text. Chapter 7.
Okay.
Let's start at the beginning, okay?
Okay.
I'll stop you when we need to discuss it.
Okay. Jerubbaal, who was Gideon, arose early with all the people who were with him, and they encamped near En Harod. The camp of Midian was to his north from the hills of Moreh in the valley. Hashem said to Gideon, the people that are with you are too numerous for me to deliver Midian into their hand, lest Israel aggrandize itself over me, saying, my own strength has saved me. So now call out in the ears of the people, saying, whoever fears and trembles, let him turn back and depart at dawn from Mount Gilead.
Okay, so these are the things that we just discussed. So let's move on to Pasuk 8.
22,000 of the people withdrew, and 10,000 remained. Then Hashem said to Gideon, the people are still too numerous. Bring them down to the water, and I shall purge them for you. I shall purge them for you there. And it shall be that whomever I say to you, this one shall go with you, he shall go with you. And if whomever I say to you, this one shall not go with you, he shall not go. He brought the people down to the water, and Hashem said to Gideon, everyone who laps from the water with his tongue as a dog laps, stand him apart. And so too, everyone who kneels on his knees to drink. It happened that the number of those who lapped with their hands to their mouth were 300 men, and all the rest of the people knelt on their knees to drink the water. Hashem said to Gideon, though through the 300 men who lap shall I save you, and I shall deliver Midian into your hands, and let all the other people leave, each to his place. And they took the provisions of the other people in their hands, as well as their chauffeurs. And as for all of the men of Israel, he sent them each to his home, and he kept the 300 men. The camp of Midian was below him in the valley. Aha. It happened that night that Hashem said to him, arise and descend into the camp, for I have delivered it into your hand. But if you're afraid to descend, go down to the camp, you and Purah, your attendant. Listen to what they will speak. Then your hands will be straightened, and you will descend into the camp. So he descended.
Okay, so wait. Okay, so here we have Hashem has recognized that Gidon, for some reason, is still a little fearful, and he feels he needs to give Gidon one more very strong and powerful sign that he should not fear whatsoever. Now, God recognizes this. He's not being asked by Gidon at this time give him another test. But he sees there's a little hesitation, there's a little lack of confidence. So he says, take your lad, which must mean like your manservant, your assistant, and go down to the camp. Go ahead. Go ahead, Ro.
Okay. So he descended with Purah, his attendant, to the edge of the armed troops in the camp. Midian, Amalek, and all the people of the east were encamping in the valley, as numerous as a locust swarm, and their camels were countless, as numerous as the sand at the seashore. Gideon arrived, and behold, a man was relating a dream to his fellows and said, Behold, I dreamt a dream. Behold, a roasted barley bread was rolling in the Midianite camp. It came to the tent and struck it, and it fell. It turned it upside down, and the tent fell. His fellow answered and said, This is none other than the sword of Gideon, son of Joash, the man of Israel. God has delivered Midian and the entire camp into his hand.
Okay, so this is a very interesting thing that happens right here. You know, we see that there are huge numbers beyond, you can't even count how many people, or what seems to be so many people and so many camels, but God sends Gideon and his servant with him. He sends someone with him for two reasons. One, as an accompaniment to help him in case there's any kind of difficulty, and this is under cloak of night. He goes at night because so he won't be seen by the enemy, and he hears. This has got to be a miracle, because you just don't go down into the camp of the enemy and all of a sudden hear about a dream, dafka, about you winning a war. So this is a planned situation by Hashem. Gideon is at a place, at a tent, where he hears that there's been a dream by one of the Midianites, and the dream is that there is this big, huge barley roasted cake that rolls into the camp of the Midianites and topples over the tent. And the person who, one of the soldiers, says to the other soldier, and that's a sign that the son, Gideon, son of Joash, is going to be heroic and successful on behalf of the Israelite God. Interesting how all the pieces kind of just fall together, right? Like, here this guy is all of a sudden, he knows who's going to fight him. He knows what the symbolism is. He knows that they're going to lose. And here we have the perfect dream that would make anybody who was going to a challenge, you know, feel very strengthened and reinforced in their challenge. But the truth of the matter is that the Midianites are just as afraid, and they are worried that they are going to be they're going to fight against massive strengthened men from the God of Israel. We've talked about this before. Why are they afraid? Because they still know the reputation of God. Don't forget, it wasn't too many generations ago that Yehoshua destroyed how many different communities and walled cities. And those people knew about the splitting of the Red Sea, and those people in Canaan knew about the God of Israel from Har Sinai to the splitting of the Red Sea and the destruction of Egypt. So these people know who the Israelites are. In addition, they themselves are fearful. Don't you think that they would have sent spies into the Israelite camp to see what the situation is? How does this guy know from a dream what the name is and who his father is, who's going to defeat him? They know from talk of those who have probably searched out amongst the idol worshippers and Canaanites in the communities that Gidon comes from, who is the warrior who's going to fight us, and what's his stature, what's his reputation? So they will have an understanding of who they're up against as well. So here this soldier is saying that Gidon, son of Joash, who will fight for Bnei Israel, the God of Israel, will be successful. Okay, so here we are. Both sides are afraid. This is an indicator that both sides have some fears. Now, Gidon's fears are being allayed here. You want to continue and we'll see what happens, Ro?
Yeah, just a question.
Sure.
What is the significance of Bnei Israel being compared to roasted barley bread?
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant to say, okay. When we first meet Gidon, what is he doing?
He's on the threshing floor.
What's he threshing?
Grapes.
No. Wheat. Because
Wheat.
he's in the wine press hiding from the Midianites, because a threshing floor in normal times is open, because after you separate the wheat, and smash all the wheat seeds out of the stalks, what do? You throw it up in the air, and the wind separates the chaff from the grain seeds. So usually a threshing floor is open, but because the Midianites have been swooping down and stealing all the crops and all the cattle and all the livestock, he was threshing wheat, the small amount of wheat that he had, right there at the and hiding. So it gives us an idea of the season. It's not winter, because you wouldn't be doing that in winter time. It's in the spring after Pesach, when you would be threshing wheat that you've picked, or the barley, the counting of the Omer, where the barley is after Pesach, it is being picked and stored for the coming winter. So it shows us the time of year. If it was, say, the winter, they may be talking about a snowstorm. Well, the snowstorm came and destroyed the camp. Or if they were talking about it, during the flood season, after the winter snows and rains, it would give us an idea that it would be in the spring. And so these are indicators, they're poetic license of indicators of the time of year. Okay. Any other questions?
I do.
Okay, we have one here.
I think it's interesting that of all these tests and all these proofs, God sets them up, except when it gets to the one with the do and making the thing happen.
Right.
And that is the only one that is actually one that Gideon sets up as a proof. And then I find that interesting that there's that change with that one that does not occur with the others.
Okay, so Beverly is happily surprised at all of the different tests and proofs. All right, you want to continue?
Okay. It happened that when Gideon heard the recounting of the dream and its interpretation, he prostrated himself. He returned to the camp of Israel and said, "Rise up, for Hashem has delivered the camp of Midian into your hand." He divided the 300 men into 3 companies. Into the hand of them all he gave shofars and empty jugs with torches inside the jugs. He said to them, "See my example and do the same. Behold, when I arrive at the edge of the camp, then do as I do, so shall you do. Then as I do, so shall you do. I will sound the shofar, I and all who are with me. Then you too shall sound shofars all around the entire camp, and you shall say, 'For Hashem and for Gideon.'" Gideon and the 100 men with him arrived at the edge of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch. When they had just barely set up guards, they sounded the shofars and broke the jugs that were in their hand. The 3 companies sounded the shofars and broke the jugs, and in their left hand they grasped the torches, and in their right hand the shofars to sound. And they called out, "The sword for Hashem and for Gideon." Each of them stood in his place all around the camp, and the entire camp ran. They shouted and fled. They sounded the 300 shofars, and Hashem set each man's sword against his fellow. And throughout the entire camp, the camp fled as far as Beit Shittah towards Zerah, as far as the border of Abel Mahola near Tabath.
Okay, we're going to stop there. Now let's talk a few minutes about the strategy of what Gideon does, because you know that oftentimes in what we would call more modern warfare, smart generals look into the Bible and they see how battles were won in the Torah, and this is one of them. And I'm gonna show you here. I'm gonna show you something in just a second. Here we go. I'm gonna share the screen with you. So share screen. Did we do it? No. Okay, I'm gonna right here. Okay. Can you see the map?
Yes.
Okay. So what we have here is a picture of the battle, the battlefield, or the typography of the area. We have, let's move this over. Let's move this up a little bit. Okay, here's the area right here. Can you see all this? We have the tribe of Naphtali, Zvulun, and Asher. Manasseh is on both sides of the Jordan River. This is the Kinneret. This is the Jordan River. This is where the battle was, the well of the spring of Harod. And you can see by the different colors of the arrows, the troops. We're blue, the enemy is red. Now, what did Gideon say? He says, "I have 300 men. I've got to make the most of my battle strategy. I'm going to divide 100, 100, 100, and I'm going to surround in 3 different areas the enemy so they can't escape into the country." He's fine for them to go out of the country, away over the Jordan, back to where they came from, but he doesn't want them to go into the country this way. So he takes the different tribes and he surrounds the enemy on 3 sides. He divides them up, and the only side left for them to run is across the Jordan River. So what he does it shows that, it shows 4 different tribes are participating, but there's only 3 sides of the area. And this is in the Jezreel Valley, the very fertile valley that's surrounded by the mountains in the Galil. And we know that Har Tavor is not that far away. And here where Devorah fought, and here in the valley, it's easy access for them to rout the enemy across the river and away from them. So what they do is he tells everybody to take a torch, a pot, and a shofar. And what they're going to do is anytime they sound the alarm for war, there's always a blast of a shofar. But we know that the shofar is very, very important in battles of Bnei Israel against their enemy. We've seen it multiple times in Yehoshua, and now we're seeing it again in Gidon. What Gidon does is he has gone down and heard that dream at night. Now you know that at night there's a shift in the watch. There's a shift from, say, like 10 to 3 in the morning, 10 o'clock at night to 3 in the morning. Then the shift changes. And usually in war, they wake up people, and those people who are waking up change positions with those who have been on watch all night. And he chooses a time that the shift is changing. And what happens when the shift changes for, say, about 5 minutes, but in between the time that the new shift is coming on and the old shift is leaving? What happens at that moment in the camp of the people who are fighting?
They're not as looking to that. They're looking at what they're doing. They're not anticipating what's going to come at them.
Do you hear that? Did you hear
No.
that?
No.
Okay, so the answer was that they're not as alert. The people going off duty are not as alert. They're looking to go back to bed and to get away from their post. And the ones who are coming on have to get settled, and they're not settled into the post yet. So it's a time of vulnerability. And so Gidon chooses a time when it's a window of opportunity, of vulnerability in the enemy. And he says to them, watch me from all 3 sides, watch what I do and do what I do, and make sure that you do it exactly the way I do it. First, he says, we're going to cover the torch with the pot so they don't see us coming. Second, we're going to have a shofar in our belt. Okay. Now we're going to walk down, surround the enemy 3 sides, and we're going to blow the shofar. Now think about it. When the enemy hears 1 or 2 shofars, they know the blast of the shofar, they know that the enemy is going to attack. But now they're hearing it from all 3 sides, and they're in a valley. And what happens to sound in a valley? It kind of reverberates all over the place. So the sound of the shofar sounds like there are thousands and thousands of people. And then they take the pot off of the torch. And what happens if you've had a pot or some kind of a container over a flame for a while? It gets smoky. It gets smoky because the flame didn't have enough air for the flame to continue, but it's smoky with it. And so they take the pot off, and there's smoke all over on these 3 sides of the encampment of the Midianites. And then they hear the shofar, they see torches all around them. And now they're switching the duty of the watch duty, and people go crazy. They don't know what to do. The watchmen don't know where to look and see where the enemy is. The people coming out of their tents who are going to duty, watch duty, are confused because they don't know where to go. They don't know whether to go fight the enemy right then and there or to go to their watch post. The people who are leaving are exhausted from being up all night, so they haven't got the strength to know exactly where. Should they stay at their post? Should they go fight somewhere? They don't know where to go fight. And those who have not been participants in any of this have been sleeping most of the night. So,
Rhonda,
yes.
I don't understand. If there's only 300 people, how can they afford to take any people for watchmen?
How can they do what?
How can they afford to take people
They
away
didn't take any. They didn't take anybody. They didn't have to
You're-
take anybody. The camp became so confused as to what to do that they start under night. And usually battles are not fought at night, but this one was a surprise attack at night at the shift
But
change.
you said that they were changing guards, changing
Right.
the guard for
The
5.
Midianites were changing guard.
Oh, the Midianites. Okay, sorry, I didn't
Midianites were
understand that. Okay,
changing
thank
their
you.
watch
Thank you.
around their camp. And so they're ready to go to bed. The Bnei Israel were ready to fight. God said to them, it's time to go. And they're up and awake and alert, and they've listened to the instructions of Gidon. So all of a sudden, there is such confusion in the camp that the enemy starts to kill each other. They don't know who they're fighting. They can't see who they're fighting. They don't know who they're fighting. There's not lots of fires at night in an encampment of an army. They usually try to keep it very low key.
So they'll be here in 7 minutes or so.
So it's very interesting that this created such confusion of the Midianites, Amalekites, and Bnei Kedem that they started killing themselves. And when they realized that they weren't killing the enemy, they didn't know what to do. There was just total shock and total confusion. And I think that is a very interesting word. I use confusion because I feel that there's a reason for the confusion, and it's a very good, I'm going to show you, okay, here is like the chat, what happens. This is Gidon's strategy. This is what he uses. He surrounds the camp, the Midian encampment. He attacks late at night to the surprise of the enemy and the change of the watch. He sounds the shofars instead of 1 or 2. He has all 300 men blowing the shofar. Now that, talk about a wake-up call. I mean, that's like so unnerving. They break the pottery after they take it off of the flames, off of the torches that hid them under darkness. And now it looks like 300 torches are all over the place. It looks like there's thousands of people. And they break the pottery that the sound and the noise sounds like crashing. And another way to disorient the enemy. And they raise their torches and they shout for Hashem and Gidon. This is quite the strategy that they use, and it was totally successful. Now, so Eureka. So Beverly says it's reminiscent of Eureka in some ways. The shofar blowing is reminiscent of it. And so we see that this is the attack. this is, it brings them great success. Now, Gidon sees that the people are fleeing. They only see one way out. And the one way out is out of the valley and across the Jordan River. So what does he do? Remember all those troops that he said wait over on the sidelines? He makes sure that a message gets to those troops, because he even engages the Ephraimites, the people from the tribe of Ephraim that are below all them, and he says, they're going across the Jordan, go get them. He does not want them to go back to their to the other side and then to get lost in the mountains and in the desert, into the wasteland. He wants to contain them, and he wants to make sure that as few as possible get caught. And he is extremely successful in this battle. So much so, let's see, what time is it? We have 2 minutes left. So much so that, let's see, Rhoda, did you finish reading the, where were you?
I was up to number 23.
Okay, just read the last couple lines.
The men of Israel were mustered from Naphtali and from Asher and from all of Manasseh, and they pursued Midian. Gideon sent messages throughout Mount Ephraim, saying, come down toward Midian and secure the waterway to block them until Beth Barah and the Jordan. All the men of Ephraim were mustered, and they occupied the water until Beth Barah and the Jordan. They captured 2 leaders of Midian, Oreb and Zeb. They killed Oreb at the rock of Oreb, and they killed Zeb at the winepress of Zeb. And they pursued Midian. They brought the heads of Oreb and Zeb to Gideon across the Jordan.
Okay, so I told you that Shoftim was not for the faint of heart. And it isn't. We've heard some pretty gruesome things in Shoftim, but they take and this is where the chapter ends on a very high note, and it's not over. We have another chapter devoted to Gidon, and that's what we'll be learning next week. How that he finally finishes the battle and what happens after he is successful in the battle.
A very quick question.
Wait a minute. So wait, hold on a second. We're gonna go back here. Okay. Go. Can you hear her?
I want to know that when Gideon says, you watch me, when I come to the camp, you do what I do. Now we see Manasseh down here. Is that where he comes from, or how does he get there? Where does he come to that they are watching him?
Okay, so they are in a they're kind of like in a semicircle. They're forming a big C, letter C. And so they can see and hear him because they're in the, in the valley, and they can copy what he's doing, because once they hear the first blast of the shofar, then they respond with all their shofars. And then he had already explained, and after that, you take the pot off of the flame, it'll be smoky, you break the pot and you yell. So this is all reminiscent, like Beverly said, of the Battle of Jericho, very similar in some ways. And the success of this strategy has been very good for Gidon and Bnei Yisrael. So next week, please God, and Mirz Hashem, we'll be able to finish up with possibly learning about Gidon. who was successful in ridding the northern area of Eretz Yisrael from the Midianites, the Amalekites, and Bnei Kedem. Any questions, any comments before we leave? Anybody?
Thank you for making it come alive for us.
Oh, you're quite welcome. Okay, well, it's a very exciting book, and clearly we see that we have in our historical compilation that Shmuel writes more information about Gidon at the Battle of Gidon and the Battle of Devorah and Ehud more than anyone else, except when we get further into Shimshon. But so certain things were so impactful and so impressive that it stayed for generations, hundreds of generations afterwards. And Shmuel was able to write all this down. So have a good week. Stay well, stay safe, and I'll see you lovely ladies next week, Amir Hashem.
Thank you,
you.
Rhonda. Have a good week.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Thank you,
Have a good week,
everybody. Thank
everybody.
you, Rhonda. Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat
Be well.
shalom to everybody. Okay. Let's see. I need to stop recording.
I didn't get a message yet, so it's not stopped yet.
Right. I can't seem to find the place to do that.